Have you ever wondered how paper is made? It's a question that may not cross our minds often, but when you think about it, it's rather intriguing. The humble sheet of paper, an everyday hero silently powering our world. From the pages of our favorite novels to the currency in our wallets, paper is an integral part of our daily lives. Our story begins over 2,000 years ago in ancient China, when the first paper was crafted from mulberry bark. This invention revolutionized communication, enabling knowledge to be preserved and shared like never before. Over the centuries, the process of papermaking evolved and spread across the globe, with each culture adding their unique touch. Today, the production of paper is a complex and fascinating process, transforming trees into the crisp white sheets we use every day. So, are you ready to unravel the mystery behind this ubiquitous material? Let's dive into the fascinating process of how paper is crafted from a tree. It all starts in a forest where trees are harvested. As dawn breaks, the forest comes alive with the hum of industry. The first step in making paper is selecting the right trees. Not every tree is suitable for paper production. The chosen ones are typically softwood trees like pine or fir, or hardwood trees like eucalyptus or birch. These species are selected for their long, strong fibers that result in high-quality paper. Once the suitable trees are identified, the harvesting begins. The process is a delicate dance between man and machine, where lumberjacks fell the trees with precision. The roar of chainsaws echoes through the forest as trees are cut down, falling with a thunderous crash. After the trees are felled, they are stripped of their branches, a process known as delimbing. This leaves behind a clean, bare log, ready for transportation. The logs are then loaded onto trucks or floated down rivers to reach their next destination, the paper mill. But let's pause for a moment to talk about an essential aspect of this process: sustainability. The paper industry is well aware of the environmental implications of tree harvesting. That's why sustainable forestry practices are a cornerstone of the industry. This means that for every tree cut down, another one is planted in its place, ensuring the forest's longevity. Moreover, many paper manufacturers also use recycled paper in their production process, reducing the need for fresh timber. This commitment to sustainability is not just about preserving our forests, but also about ensuring the future of the paper industry. The journey of the logs doesn't end at the mill's doorstep. The logs are stored in large yards, waiting for their transformation. They are sorted by species and size, ready to be turned into the pulp that forms the basis of paper. Once at the mill, the real transformation begins. Whether it's a novel that touches hearts, a newspaper that informs minds, or a note that expresses love, remember, it all starts with a tree in a forest. At the mill, the trees are stripped of their bark and chopped into small pieces. This is the first step towards transforming these mighty giants of nature into something as delicate and useful as paper. These small pieces, or wood chips as we commonly call them, then embark on a journey through a process known as pulping. Picture a giant cooking pot. But instead of making a stew, we're cooking wood chips. These chips are mixed with a chemical solution, a concoction specifically designed to break the wood down into its core components. The heat and the chemicals work in harmony, breaking the bonds between the cellulose fibers, the heart and soul of what will eventually become paper. Now, if you're imagining a smooth, porridge-like mixture, let's add a bit of reality to that picture. The result of this cooking process is a thick, soupy substance known as pulp. But this pulp is far from ready to be transformed into paper. It's filled with all sorts of impurities that need to be removed. This is where the washing process comes into play. The pulp is washed thoroughly to remove these unwanted elements. Think of it as giving the pulp a good, long, and much-needed bath. This bath not only cleanses the pulp, but also removes the chemicals used in the cooking process. But the journey doesn't end here. The cleaned pulp is then bleached. Now, why do we bleach the pulp, you ask? Well, this process is crucial to give the paper its characteristic white appearance. The bleaching process removes any remaining traces of color from the wood, leaving behind pure white cellulose fibers. And voila, we have our pulp, clean, white, and ready to be transformed into paper. But remember, this pulp is still a wet, soupy mixture. It's far from the crisp, dry sheets of paper that we're so familiar with. Once the pulp is ready, it's time to form the paper. But that's a tale for another scene. Until then, let's appreciate the journey these humble wood chips have undertaken, transforming from solid wood to a pulpy mixture, ready to be shaped into something as simple and essential as paper. The pulp is now spread onto a huge screen where water drains away. Here, the magic truly begins. As the water drains, the pulp fibres start to bond, to hold hands, if you will. This camaraderie among fibres is what gives birth to a mat of paper. This is possible due to the naturally occurring cellulose in the pulp. When wet, these cellulose fibres get all gummy and sticky, which allows them to bind together as the water drains away. But let's not get carried away with the romanticism of it all. This mat is still very wet, somewhat like a newborn, and needs to be nurtured further. That's when the pressing comes into play. This wet mat of paper is passed through large rollers which exert a great deal of pressure. This pressure forces out much more water than simple gravity ever could. It's a bit like wringing out a wet towel, but on a much grander scale. Following this pressing, the mat is still not quite paper. It's still too damp. So it's on to the next stage, drying. The mat is threaded through heated drying cylinders. These cylinders evaporate the moisture, drying out the mat and transforming it into a sheet of paper. It's a bit like hanging your clothes out to dry, but again on a much grander scale. These stages of formation, from the bonding of the fibres to the pressing out of water to the final drying, all contribute to the creation of paper. Each step is carefully controlled to ensure the right thickness, texture and moisture content. Too wet, and the paper will be weak. Too dry, and it will be brittle. It's a delicate balance that paper makers have been perfecting for centuries. But we're not quite finished yet. There's more to the story of paper, more processes that refine and finish this incredible material. But that's a tale for the next scene. For now, let's appreciate the simplicity and the complexity of the paper formation process, a process that turns a watery pulp into a solid sheet of paper. The paper is now ready for the final steps. It's a thrilling moment in our papermaking journey as we move towards the finishing line. So let's dive right in, shall we? First off, we have the smoothing process. This is where the paper gets its finish, its texture. This step is crucial because it influences how the paper will interact with a pen or a printer. Now the paper is passed through a series of rollers, a process known as calendering. These rollers exert pressure on the paper, and the level of smoothness is determined by the number of times it's passed through them. The more times, the smoother the paper. Next up is the coating process. This is where the paper gets its shine. A coat, or a thin layer of a substance, is applied to the paper. This could be clay, starch, or even latex. This coat enhances the paper's brightness, opacity, and printability. It's like the paper is getting a makeover. It's getting all dolled up. And finally, we have the cutting process. This is where the paper gets its size and shape. The giant rolls of paper are cut into the desired sizes, and voila, we have our sheets of paper. This could be your standard letter size, or the larger legal size, or even custom sizes for special projects. Now, depending on the finishing process, we can have various types of paper. You have glossy paper, matte paper, textured paper, and so many more. Each type has its own unique characteristics and uses. For instance, glossy paper is great for photos, while matte paper is perfect for writing. So you see, the finishing touches are just as important as the initial steps. They give the paper its final form, its personality. It's like the paper is going on a journey, and the finishing touches are the final destination. And there you have it, the paper we use every day is ready for distribution and use. From trees to sheets, it's quite a fascinating process, isn't it? So the next time you pick up a piece of paper, remember the journey it's been on. It's quite a story to tell, don't you think? So, what have we learned today? Well, we've been on a fascinating journey, haven't we? We've explored the intricate process of papermaking, from the humble beginnings in the forest to the final product we use every day. We started with the harvesting of trees, a crucial step that requires careful management to ensure sustainability. Then, we delved into the pulping process, where wood chips are transformed into a slurry-like substance, a key stage that paves the way for paper formation. We've seen how this pulpy mixture is spread, pressed and dried to form sheets of paper. Lastly, we focused on the finishing touches, the process of cutting, coating and packaging that makes the paper ready for our use. It's quite a complex process, isn't it? It's a testament to human ingenuity and our ability to transform natural resources into practical tools. Next time you write a note, read a book, or print a document, remember the journey that piece of paper has been on.